morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
I hope your calving is going well and you can find a little bit of bare ground this time of year. Now, this is the time when a lot of horses end their winter holidays and they get pressed back into service, and sometimes that long layoff can create real issues in the first few rides. And that's what happened to the roping psychologist Dr. Michael Johnson a while back with one of his top heading horses, the one he calls Little Blue.
He would rear up in just wild danger and walk on his back feet for several yards. Very scary, very dangerous.
When Mike finally discovered the root of the problem, then he really went on a guilt trip, and you'll hear about that today. And the always amazing mind of Baxter Black is back at it again today.
A new method of syllable conjunction to conserve words, syllojunction.
And wait till you hear some of his examples. The Rangeland News has some very interesting items.
More meat as a whole is expected to be produced this year.
The Cowboy Poetry Spotlight this week features one of the greats, Floyd Beard.
I got me a crew, one man for each steer. Well, we're still 10 head short, but we corralled 92 deer.
An interesting question on the Urban Saddles and Western Wire horse training file. What do I think about making the first few rides on a colt without a saddle? Another classic song of the West, and Dr. Michael Johnson takes us through an interesting situation after this great song about what working cowboys deal with all the time. Michael Fleming, the great group New West, and the rodeo nobody knows.
On the back roads of Utah near the San Rafael, an old rough stock rider strides to the corral. His body all battered from battles he's fought, all whalebone and rawhide and eyes like a hawk. He takes a deep seat on a Mustang that waits like a time bomb just ticking away. Flash of the spur and the mad dance of hooves, and a bronc buster starts a new day. At the rodeo nobody knows, no crowds cheer aloud, no trophies of gold. Every day there's a Wild West show. At the rodeo nobody knows. A young man on horseback in the West Texas brush, searching for strays left behind in the bush. He senses a movement below in the draw. His cow pony tenses and waits for the call. Then out with a mad dash and down the ravine, the young maverick races away. And right there behind him and building a loop, the hand closes in on his prey. At the rodeo nobody knows, no crowd cheering loud, no trophies of gold. Every day there's a Wild West show. At the rodeo nobody knows. Texas to Canada, northwest and south, from the Gulf to the Great Basin too. The punchers, vaqueros, and buckaroos ride, 'cause it's what they were destined to do. At the rodeo nobody knows, no crowds cheering loud, no trophies of gold. Every day there's a Wild West show. At the rodeo nobody
that is one fantastic group. Mike Fleming, Real Reynoso, and Dave Jackson, known as New West. Remember a few years ago, Mike Fleming was up here for the Kamloops Cowboy Festival, and he stayed at the ranch with us. And I took him out for a ride the morning after the festival ended. I don't think he'd ever seen so much snow, but we sure had a good time. Well, it's been a while since my good friend, the roping psychologist, Dr. Michael Johnson, has been here. But we brought him back this week. Michael?
At 60 years of age and a lifetime with horses, I can't help but think sometimes I'm quite the horseman. Yet not a week goes by that I find that feeling of expertise to be far from the truth. When it comes to horses, I can still do the stupidest things. In an old movie, Bing Crosby sings a haunting little ballad called "You Haven't Learned a Thing." I know what he means. It really embarrasses me to admit what I'm about to. But perhaps after hearing this, some of you won't make the same mistake I did. Consider the case with my best partner, the Blue Man. What a good horse he's been. I raised him from a pup. In the year 2000, when his mama laid him on the ground that night, that little scamp got to his feet and wobbled around a bit and looked at me and said, "I'm ready, Pop." At age 3, when tracking his first steer, the Blue Man ran right to him and chomped him on the butt. At that moment, I knew all I had to do was get out of this little fella's way. And I was right. I never did much training on Blue. His intense desire to rope came with him from heaven, just dripping off his DNA. Imagine my surprise when it all went away. I started Blue when he was 3 years old, and we took it easy for over a year. And since age 5, we've roped countless steers, and Blue's tried his heart out on each one. It's hard for me to imagine a horse with a better attitude alive today. Because Sherry and I had moved and were required to build fences and barns for a year, Blue was allowed a long and well-deserved rest. His only duty for months was to stand in the pasture with the other horses, probably bragging to them about his rodeo adventures, and just eat grass. Once done with our building projects, including the arena, we were ready to begin again. And I just knew Blue would be excited and ready to go. I had no idea how right I was.
Well, he is so spellbinding, and this gets really interesting. You'll hear more when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. So glad to have you back on the Spirit of the West. The Blue Man is a legend in Texas team roping circles. This amazing horse has carried the roping psychologist Dr. Michael Johnson to a lot of pay windows over the years. But a while back, while the Johnsons were busy building barns and corrals, Blue had almost a full year off. And when Mike put him back to work, he got a big surprise.
Fresh and full of himself after that long layoff, Blue pranced and snorted like some Spanish trick horse in a big city parade. This over-the-top behavior was cute for a few days, but it really began to wear on my nerves. This was not my Blue. I became concerned. Then things not only went downhill, they fell off the mountainside. Riding Blue in the arena, he seemed fine. And suddenly, without warning, he would run backwards for 50 yards. He seemed to be terrified of the heel box and would lock up in a rigid, steel-hard pose. Reminded me of some child's toy with exhausted batteries. And when he finally did move, a forward lunge would be he would rear up in just wild danger and walk on his back feet for several yards. Very scary and very dangerous. I was lost and stunned that the most willing partner I had ever known would do this. So like some expert old real-time cowboy, I hammered on him. Oh, I don't mean I hit him, but I gave him an unpleasant alternative. If you don't want to stand still, I told him, you don't have to, but you do have to lope. And round we would go, 50 laps, 100 laps, and with each successive trial, Blue became worse. And finally I realized something was wrong. Brilliant me. His behavior deteriorated to the point that riding him became extremely dangerous. Imagine how I felt later when I learned Blue wasn't misbehaving. Blue was suffering from the human equivalent of a kidney stone. All this time he had been in intense pain, And I learned something else. The symptoms of pain in a horse often manifest themselves in precisely the same manner as misbehavior.
Whoa, well, there's a little more to the story, and it's coming up after Utah cowboy, singer, and amazing songwriter Bren Hill.
I'm just a fair weather cowboy, top hand when it's sunny, warm, and clear. I'll be the wooliest, wildest buckaroo, but only when summertime is here. Oh, Neil, when that big old sky's bright and blue, I am the man you should employ. But I'll be gone when that autumn wind blows through, 'cause I'm just a fair weather cowboy. My old hoss is cow horse born and bred. He likes dragging calves and roping steer. He'll sort and gather in beautiful weather, and then turn out to pasture for 9 months of the year. As long as it ain't dusty, dry, and hot, not too hot, riding him is a fundamental joy. Give you everything we got if it ain't raining, 'cause I'm just a fair weather cowboy. Ask me, them cowpokes, they're all crazy to sit up on a horse out in the rain. Why, if it was me, I'd go in and watch a western movie and lament. I am just like old John Wayne when it's sunny, when that big old sky's bright and blue. I am the man you should employ. But I'll be gone when that autumn wind blows through, 'cause I'm just a fair weather cowboy. Or I'll tell you folks, I'm just a fair weather cowboy, fresh out of Percocet. I'm just a fair weather cowboy.
Whoa, pretty hot little cowboy band there from Bren Hill. And he is actually performing all over the country this year. He was a big hit at the Kamloops Cowboy Festival a few years back, too. And now let's get back to Dr. Michael Johnson, the famous roping psychologist. And Mike is recalling the episode he went through with his beloved Blue Man, his favorite heading horse that he raised from the time he foaled him on the ranch. And after a year off, Blue's behavior was completely out of character. And after a lot of stressful rides, it was finally determined that the horse had the equine equivalent of a human kidney stone, and he was in severe pain whenever there was a rider on his back.
Once the problem was extracted, Blue returned to his normal self. Later, a friend advised that I should not be too hard on myself, as in, we all make mistakes. I noticed that didn't make me feel a bit better. But there are some lessons here. One being, in dealing with horses, we must do everything we can to ensure pain is not causing any part of the problem. And secondly, if a horse experiences a long layoff, Don't assume he will be the same when you return, no matter how close you once were. If you'll do those things, you might be able to avoid spending several days doing what I had to do, asking Jesus to forgive me for what I had done to one of my oldest and dearest friends.
Well, it makes you kind of feel for both of them, doesn't it? Well, next, the amazing mind of Baxter Black has found a way to make human communication much more efficient. And I think you'll get a kick out of his examples. The legend himself, Gary Felgard, looks at the world through the eyes of a cowboy. And then it's the Rangeland News, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan with a little peek at Scylla Junction.
Ladies and gentlemen and followers of cowboy humor, in a moment of weakness, I, Baxter Black, have written another book. I appreciate it. Its title is Scrambled Wisdom. Almost isn't is it? Which almost makes sense. Well, our offer does make sense. Only $19.95 plus shipping.
The solid gold guarantee.
Call 800-654-2550. Online at baxterblack.com.
In an era of increasing pressure on the Earth's natural resources and the need to save valuable time in communication, Chris and I offer a new method of syllable conjunction to conserve words, syllojunction. For instance, instead of asking, does your innuendo about my behavior insinuate you think I'm guilty? You could simply say, is that an insinuendo? In syllojunction, a combine becomes a kine, broke down is brown, and go to town for parts is garts, as in, honey, my kine's brown, can you garts? The new system will be a newspaper headline writer's dream. Local toper boffs, rover by rear. In longhand translation, that's local team roper bucks off, run over by roping steer. Hospitabilitating, visiting someone who's rehabilitating in the hospital. A coy, cowboy. Churfer, channel surfer. Cato, couch potato. Frep, pharmaceutical rep. A darmer, dairy farmer. Frank rashed his DeJulie into a grin because he didn't trite. The hailer flovered, his source was scrupped, but the horse was fine. Frank crashed his Dodge Dually into a grain bin because he didn't turn right. The horse trailer flipped over, his sorrel horse was scraped up, but the paint horse was fine. I'd like a cup of coffee Freeman 2 frags with hounds and cakin'. Canadian bacon. Jimmy, Ryan and Gores, it's nearly slock. 6 o'clock. I can see syllojunction becoming quite popular. We'll use words like log for lazy dog, flot for feedlot, blangus, Perford, jeer, John Deere, cactor, a case tractor, a triver, truck driver, brider, bronc rider, suffuser, cell phone abuser, and on and on and on. Well, I'm going to leave you with this one, and maybe you can figure it out. Insufferatarian, injured at pest. Outside Prodeo, when Bear Brider boffs into her organogrown fruit and nut display. Both suffered blary and ballnut stains. Thudness Nobert. Insufferable Vegetarian and Bareback Rider have a little collision. Both were covered with blackberry and black walnut stains.
This is Baxter West with Hugh McLennan.
Come and be part of the Top Cut Speckle Park sale Tuesday, April 3rd at 1 p.m. at Dryland Trading Corp in Veteran, Alberta, offering registered yearling bulls, purebred heifers, commercial heifer packages, embryo and semen lots. This quality group of cattle offered by Unlimited Spots, Lair Ranching, Movin' Spots, C Speckles, DAM Dots Ranch. Check out the catalog online at topcutspeckledpark.com or Facebook. Complimentary Speckled Park beef on a bun on sale day. Contact Dustin for more information at 306-228-1498. I wonder if Baxter would syllojunction that Speckled Park name down to Spark. That is an amazing breed. The only breed that was actually a breed of beef cattle totally developed in Canada. Man, I'd love to be at that sale. Now, when you're talking about legends in the world of Western and country music, you've got to include Gary Felgard. Gary and I have ridden a few trails together, chased a few cattle together, and he was in the saddle for a lot of the old Kamloops cattle drives. In fact, that's where we met, and we've been friends ever since. He's still writing, picking, and singing, and here's a great example of his work.
If we could see through the eyes of a cowboy, we could ride the wild prairie the Blackfoot and Cree. We could ride the high valleys where the grizzly roams free. We could taste of their freedom, and nothing tastes better than that. If we could see through the eyes of a cowboy, if we could look through the eyes of a cowboy, we could hide in the Badlands with the Youngers and James. We could run through the sagebrush with the outlaw McLeans. We could taste of their freedom, and nothing tastes better than that. If we could look through the eyes of a cowboy, riding into the sunset with Roy and Jean tagging along. With our trusty companions singing the old cowboy song. If we could see through the eyes of a cowboy, we could be the dark stranger who rides into town, the fearless old lawman staring him down. We might be the good guy, the cowboy saving the girl. If we could see through the eyes of a cowboy, if we could see through the eyes of a cowboy,
news of the rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West.
At the top of page 1, it says herd expansion might still be underway, but more cattle in the U.S. will be going to market in 2018 to meet an expanding worldwide demand for beef. With more, here's Rod Bain.
More meat as a whole is expected to be produced this year. This is USDA livestock analyst Shanika Heron.
For 2018, USDA is forecasting red meat and poultry production up 3.8%.
Heron says this is due in part to further expected expansion in both the red meat and poultry sectors.
However, on the turkey side, we are not forecasting production to increase, only a fractional decline.
She adds the increased production will be met by rising consumer demand for meat.
Per capita disappearance on a retail basis is forecast at 222.6 pounds, primarily driven by increases in production across all of the livestock sectors, minus turkey. However, we are anticipating turkey per capita disappearance to increase in 2018.
Overall meat exports, as well as exports by meat category, should increase this year based on the weakening U.S. dollar overseas, as well as global demand for meat. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
The Canadian Hereford Association has been made aware of other purebred cattle breeders being contacted by an individual who says he wants to buy cattle. And after several emails discussing the details, an authentic-looking check is sent to the breeder for the cattle, and this is then followed by notification that the order has changed and asking for a partial refund to be deposited to a bank account that they give you. So, if you have been contacted in this way, do not send them any money. And if you've been involved in a similar encounter, you can contact Stephen Scott at 403-275-2662 for further details to verify that you're a target of this scam. And that would be great if you could share this with any other neighbors and friends that you have in the cattle business. That from the Canadian Hereford Association. A trace investigation from a bovine tuberculosis infected herd in Ottawa County, and that's in Michigan, not Ontario, has led to the identification of a bovine TB positive herd of roping cattle in Kalamazoo County. The Ottawa County cattle, which originated from a bovine TB infected herd in Indiana, had spent some time at a Kalamazoo County farm. All the cattle on the farm were removed, and 2 were found infected with bovine tuberculosis. And South Dakota State University researchers have found antibodies against 2 strains of influenza D in blood samples from horses in the Midwest, proving that horses can be infected with the virus. The research doctor vet said horses clearly are another host for the influenza D virus, but we don't know yet what type of symptoms horses might experience. In cattle, influenza D typically appears as part of a respiratory disease complex, and the next step in horses will be to isolate the virus and characterize it to determine if it's different than other strains. And the study shows that when cattle and horses commingle, the possibility for virus transmission between the species exists. Apparently, the virus can spill from cattle to horses. Ontario cattle producers have said no to a bid to increase the checkoff they pay to beef farmers of Ontario. 66% support was required for approval, and it didn't get there. Beef Farmers of Ontario, BFO, pulled from its reserves to pay off a 2017 deficit of nearly $1 million and was planning to do the same in 2018 in anticipation of getting the $1.50 per head increase in checkoff approved. The loss of an increased provincial checkoff will have national implications, as Ontario has been slow to approve a new national agreement and increased checkoff. The vote, by the way, was 61% in favor. About 73 head of buffalo were intentionally released from the Stevens Creek compound in Yellowstone Park in late February after somebody compromised the fences. A Yellowstone National Park representative said that most of the animals were returned to the compound through the same holes in the fence that they came out of. The herd was being held to be processed or tested for brucellosis. And the next regular sale at the BC Livestock Co-op Yards in Kamloops is March the 20th, and March 29th it's the regular sale at the Williams Lake Yards. April 16th, the Vanderhoof Yards regular sale. And you can get all the sale dates and the information at bclivestock.bc.ca. And that's where you can see all the sales live online as well. Meanwhile, over at the Innisfail Auction Market in Innisfail, that long-time family-owned operation still run by the Danes family, regular cattle sales every Wednesday. Butcher cows and bulls start at 9 in the morning, calves and yearlings after that, and bred cows and pairs start about noon. And there's lots of special bull sales coming up. You can see them all at InnisfailAuctionMarket.com. And what do you know? We're down to the final item. And this one takes us back to the dining room of a luxurious cruise ship where the Spirit of the West cruisers were all dressed up in clean Wranglers and nice Western shirts and sports coats, and the ladies just looked terrific. And it was a classy menu for sure. And one of the appetizers listed was escargot. And as you know, that's a fancy name for snails. Well, Andrew was sitting next to us, and he had 4 orders of them. And I said, wow, how come you had so many escargot? And he said, simple, I don't like fast food. That might take a while. And that's the Rangeland News. Coming up on the Irvin Saddles and Western Wear horse training file, a listener wants to know what I think of making the first few rides on a colt without a saddle. And I will give you some examples from my youthful past. And I'll have another story from last week's guest, Rhonda Sedgwick Stearns, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. The Irvin Saddles and Western Wear horse training file is on its way, and that's where I'll look at making the first few rides on a colt without using a saddle. And here's something appropriate from Bernadette Ducharme with the words of Mama Winnie. One of the nicest compliments you can pay a cowboy. Tell him he was good around horses.
He was born and raised a city kid, but We long for those cowboy places where he could smell the scent of pines, taste the freedom of open spaces. And at night he dreamed about horses. Found a nice little spread high up in the hills, and someone who gave him a chance. He proved he was worth every penny he earned and could do anything on the ranch. And he was pretty damn good around horses. He broke every colt that was born on the place, and some that were ranked to the bone. Then he entered the world of the wild ones and branded a few of his own. And he learned all he could about horses. The rodeo scene was exciting and rough, and he got caught up in the game. He rode everything that stood on four legs, but the pony chucks brought him fame. And he always bedded down near his horses. When time took its toll and he couldn't ride, he'd help pull the gates at the shoes. He wasn't afraid to give some advice and get a little dust on his boots. And he fed and watered the horses. Near the end of his life, he'd sit for hours thinking back to the days of his youth. With failing eyes, he'd stare out the window and wonder how much was the truth. But he was pretty damn sure he saw horses. And when he passed on to that range in the sky, nobody would utter a word. Why he shouldn't be given the honor as wrangler for the heavenly herd. And God knows he was good around horses. Yeah, God knows he was good around horses. Yeah, God knows Frenchie was good around horses.
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
Experience the true spirit of the West at Canada's largest Western store, Irvine Tack and Western Wear. If you need a curb strap or a 4-star gooseneck trailer, you'll find it here. A saddle for every rider. Cutters, reiners, penners, trainers, working ranch cowboys, ropers. They have over 1,200 in stock. And they have Western wear for the entire family. And how about a gift card? Shop online at irvinesaddles.ca. Free shipping on orders of over $100. irvinesaddle.ca, 1-877-946-9494. Interesting question this week from a listener who wants to know what I think about putting the first few rides on a colt bareback, not introducing the saddle until later. Well, here's what rising Western music star and young Texas horse gal Mickey Daniels says. I like to start the saddle training process by riding bareback. If I do my job correctly from the beginning, the horse and I both find comfort and balance in the contact we have with each other. As the saying goes, you can easily guide a 1,200-pound animal with 4 fingers and your rear end bareback. And then when you climb on with a saddle, you'll already have confidence from the horse that's necessary in the partnership between the horse and the rider. As well said, Mickey. The normal procedure, of course, is getting the colt used to a saddle before you ever climb on, but I really think in some cases it makes it much tougher for the colt. Case in point, Glenn Stewart at the Red Deer Main Event Trainers Challenge last year. His colt fought the saddle for 2 days, but he would let Glenn climb over his back, lay across his back, and then sit on him bareback without the saddle. Leads me to another example. Back when I was somewhat younger and a little more, maybe a lot more supple, Billy and I pastured about 50 horses for a dealer, and there were all kinds of horses in the bunch, race horses that were off the track, pack horses, retired rodeo broncs, former ranch horses, and many more. I tried out a whole bunch of them, and here's how I did it. I knew nothing about them, but I'd catch and halter one that looked okay. I'd do a little groundwork that told me basically how much resistance they had, and if it looked pretty good, I'd take the colt to a big pen, lay over his back, and then swing a leg over, and I could tell pretty quick, even with just a halter, if they had any rein or handle or yield on them. And with a lot of them, I found I could ride them around the corral, stopping, backing up, and turning in both directions. And if that all went well, then I'd saddle them, and most of the time I'd just ride on up the trail. Now, there were quite a few that I immediately stepped off just as quick as I climbed on, because I could feel a lot of resistance and tightness building. And you can sure do that when there's nothing between you and the horse. I probably won't do much of that anymore, though. However, we did wind up keeping 2 of those horses, and we used them on the ranch for a lot of years, and they turned out great. For Irvin Saddles and Western Wear, that's the Horse Training File. Something else that works just great for our horses is that daily feeding of Hoffman's Horse Ration, and you can find out all about it at hoffmanshorseration.com. And speaking of horses, come and see the largest selection of well-broke horses in Western Canada at the 5th Annual Top Gun Horse Sale. April 14th, high noon, at the Kelnash Event Center, Ponoka, Alberta. You can preview the horses Friday, April 13th at 4 p.m., and they start coming through the ring Saturday, April 14th at high noon. Horses for ranch work, team penning, rope and trail riding, barrels, mounted shooting, and kids' horses. Every type of horse you might be looking for, including loads of ranch horses. Every horse will be ridden, driven, or led into the ring. Rain or shine, everything's inside. For information and a look at the horses, see TopGunHorseSales.com or call Jordan Dodds, 403-783-0246. You know, we're still getting lots of calls on our September Spirit of the West Cruise, our 17th annual, and it's starting to be really full, but we might be able to squeeze you in. We will be staying at the beautiful Chateau Fairmont in Quebec City the night of September 16th, and then we board that beautiful ship on September 17th, the Adventurer of the Seas from Royal Caribbean. And we have a full tour of Quebec City before that, and then we will be sailing on to places like Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, Sydney, Nova Scotia, Halifax, St. John, New Brunswick, the Bay of Fundy, Bar Harbor, Maine, Boston, Portland, Maine, Cape Liberty, New Jersey, and winding up in New York City with an add-on package of 3 days in New York, including a New York Mets baseball game. And for all the information, you can just call the toll-free number, 1-800-530-0131. Well, a lot of you have told me how much you enjoyed hearing Rhonda Sedgwick Stearns for the last couple of weeks, and here's a little bit more that we didn't have time for last week. As I mentioned how Rhonda and her late husband, Bill Stearns, really were immersed in the real world of horses and cattle.
Yeah, I really did, and I'm so thankful for that. I think of it as such a privilege, and then I think what a privilege my husband and I had in the later years when we did cowboy together on big outfits, and we kept track on one outfit with a map on the wall in the hallway in the house that we stayed in, and we were riding anywhere from 35 to 50 miles a day every day during the spring and fall works. And very few people in my era have that opportunity because the land's cut up now. And the pastures are smaller, and people haul horses, and that was rough country just west of Lance Creek, Wyoming, where you couldn't go any place with a horse trailer and a vehicle. It just didn't. There weren't even roads most places, and it would have taken you all day to get somewhere with a horse trailer and a pickup. So you just went horseback and came back horseback.
Yeah, you know, it's so sad to see that all kind of coming to an end, and that's one of the things that attracted us to the part of the world we live in now. There still are big pastures and places where you can't use a quad and you can't get a truck, but we see the trend. You know, we see these big ranches being divided up and cross-fenced into smaller acreages, and we used to trail cattle from here all the way down to the Thompson River. Impossible to do that now, you know, and that was only, you know, came to an end 15 or 20 years ago. It reminds me of the song that Don Edwards does called The Old Cowman. And it's just,
I love that song.
Yeah, and doesn't that...
Of course, that was based on a Badger Clark
poem. But it just expresses, you know, what's going on in the West so well. And I know that
it really did. And of course, Badger Clark, having grown up here in our Dakota country and then living in Arizona as a young man, where he went for his health, and it was such big country, and he certainly captured that. It's one of my favorites of the modern songs about the West.
I rode across the valley range I hadn't seen for years. The trail was all so sport and strange, it nearly fetched the tears. I had to let 10 fences down, the fussy lanes ran wrong, and each new line would make me frown and hum this morning song. Here I'm stretching of the wire, the urban brand is on the land, I reckon I'll retire. And while progress toots her greedy horn and makes her motor buzz, I thanks the Lord I wasn't born no later than I was. 'Twas good to live when all the sod, without no fence or fuss, belonged in partnership with God, Mother Nature, and to us. Where skylines bound from east to west, and room to go and come, I loved my fellow man the best when he was scattered some. Closer and closer across the wire, why there's hardly play to step away to call a man a liar. Their house has locks on every door, their land is in a crate. These ain't the plains of God no more, it's only real estate. When my old soul hunts range and rest beyond the last divide, just plant me in some stretch of west, sunny, lone, and wide. Let cattle rub the tombstone round and coyotes mourn their kin. Let horses come and paw the mound, but don't you fence it in. Far and farther flings the wire, to crowd and pinch another inch, it's all their heart's desire. The world is overstocked with men, and some will see the day when each must keep his little pen, but I'll be far away. While progress toots her greedy horn, makes her motor buzz, thanks the Lord I wasn't born no later than I was.
A lot of those releases on the now defunct Warner Western label were so good. Just love the production touch under the guiding hand of Joey Miskelin. And Rhonda, I just can't tell you how much I've enjoyed these conversations.
Well, thank you, Hugh, and it's certainly an honor and a pleasure to me to visit with you, because I've met you years ago at some of the cowboy gatherings, and I always admired the kind of show that you put on and the way that you are helping save this heritage. It needs to be recorded and saved, and you're doing the world a tremendous service by doing that, and your voice is wonderful for this work, and I'm just honored to have been part of one of your shows, Hugh.
Oh, gosh, thank you so much, Rhonda.
Well, still to come, this week's classic Western song and a piece of cowboy poetry from one of the very best, When the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West for this week's classic Song of the West. we go to a group I first heard doing a song called Hot Rod Lincoln, which was recorded by Charlie Ryan in 1954. Charlie wrote that, too. Now, this group's version was a hit in 1975 from Commander Cody and his Lost Planet Airmen. Now, this song was quite a departure from their hard-driving, country rock, truck-driving style music, and I have searched all over, but I cannot find out who wrote this. But to my ears, it's a great fit for a classic Western song. From a live performance on stage in Texas, Commander Cody and the Lost Planet Airmen and When the Sun Sets on the Sage.
When the sun sets on the sage, I'll say, how do you do? That's when cowboys go to sleep. Ole, ole. And my pony will be waiting in the dusk for me. Say adios when the sun sets on the sage. Fare thee well, oh fare thee well, I'll say goodbye to you. Supper's waiting on the table, ole, ole. And the cattle, they are lowing, going home to rest. Say adios when the sun sets on the sage. The sky is all aglow, the shadows are falling. Now it's high time to go, hear those gentle voices calling. No more weeping, no more tears, I want a smile from you. We'll be parting for a while, ole, ole. But our hearts will still remember that our love was true. Say adios when the sun sets on the sage. Tears, I want a smile from you. We'll be parting for a while, ole, ole. But our hearts will still remember that our love was true. Say adios when the sun sets on the sage. Say adios when the sun sets on the sage.
Floyd Beard is the real deal for sure, and this cowboy and poet and rancher was on his way to a gathering a little while ago when he was hit by a stroke. And he wound up having emergency surgery to remove a blood clot in his head. And I'm happy to say that he's doing pretty well now. In fact, last week he posted this message on Facebook. To Dave McClure, Terry Nash, Dennis Russell, Randy Houston, Dale Burleson, David McCall, Chris Isaacs, Dwayne Nelson, and others, I've picked out a few of my mentors and pards. Been reading some of your posts, and I can tell that many of you are still going on the assumption that there is a brain inside your head. I just wanted you to know that I've gone a step further. I now have a world-renowned and respected neurological surgeon who will stand up even in mixed company without additional compensation and verify that he had made visual contact with my brain and confirmed that I actually have one. Dale Page, you can disregard this. No need to point out the obvious. And Floyd posted that after his surgery, so that sounds pretty positive. And here he is with what he calls diversify.
My base is too narrow. It just won't fly. A speaker once said to diversify. Wife, let's run steers. That's the way to go. You just turn them out on the mountain and let them grow. Well, I got those steers, cost 30 grand. And I rented some pasture, good mountain land. What do you want to eat, soup or something I bake? Wife, we're now ranchers, we'll eat steak. Well, I turned them steers out through a gate in the fence, and that was a month ago, and I ain't seen them since. I found a set of tracks up high on the elk trails, and in the brush I saw a shadder, an ear, and 2 tails. The only reason I have to keep my ulcer down is I ain't seen no carcasses nor crows flying around. But I've been a-sharpening my pencil and a-cutting out slack. You reckon that banker will want his entire 30 grand plus interest paid back? Well, what are we eating? Are we still eating steak? You know, I saw a good sale on hamburger helper and spicy shake and bake. Well, the steers have showed up since the snow forced them down, and they're fat and sassy. Not a buyer in town. Roundup was fun, though. 12-foot oak brush, thick and coarse, and them steers weigh 950 and can outrun a horse. I got me a crew, 1 man for each steer. Well, we're still 10 head short, but we corralled 92 deer. Well, here's a buyer and he takes them. What? Back off 12 cents a pound, and I take 2% shrink, and I deliver to town? Well, my cash flow sure looks different, 'cause flowing it's not. My collateral's worn out, my banker's still hot. Friends, if you're at a convention or a banquet or other such place, and a speaker comes in and says to broaden your base, run a cash flow sheet, research it, and then, if you think he's still right, buy a rooster and a hen.
Well, thank you so much for riding along today, and I sure hope you can join us right here next week at the same time. And thanks again to our great support crew, Mark and Kathy McMillan. And, you know, if you're looking for tractor parts, any make, any year, Mark can help you. Just see bctractorparts.com, and you don't have to be in BC to see it. And I can't wait to see that 1949 Ford 9N that Mark's restoring this winter. Oh yeah, be sure to see the latest issue of Canadian Cowboy Country Magazine. You can pick it up at your newsstand or subscribe online at cowboycountrymagazine.com. Till next week, when I hope to have a very special guest, I'm Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.